The history of the Jews has always been stormy, with all the clashes of religions, persecution, expulsion, and conflicts. This video will trace their stories back to the time of Judah Kingdom. After the death of King Solomon in 931 BC, the united monarchy was split into the Kingdom of Israel and the Kingdom of Judah. In 722 BC, the Kingdom of Israel was invaded by the Assyrians. The remaining population fled to the Kingdom of Judah and its capital city, Jerusalem. The region was put under the control of the Assyrians for a century, until 612 BC, when the Assyrian Empire was overthrown by the Babylonians. In 586 BC, Babylon conquered Judah, Solomon's temple was demolished, and the Jews were exiled to Babylon. In 538 BC, Babylon fell to the Persian Achaemenid Empire. The new king, Cyrus the Great, decreed freedom to subjugated nations. The Jews in Babylon returned to Judah, where they rebuilt the city and organized the foundations of Jewish culture with the reconstruction of Solomon's temple and the writing of Torah, part of the Jewish Bible. 2 centuries later, Alexander the Great of Macedon made a conquest of the Achaemenid Empire. After the success, due to the death of Alexander at a young age, the empire was divided among his generals into various Hellenic kingdoms. Following the incorporation of Judea into the Seleucid kingdom in 198 BC, the crack in relations between the religious Jews and Hellenized Jews emerged. This was a time of religious struggle as the Jewish population split. Under the reign of King Antiochus IV, the Second Temple, which was built on the ruin of Solomon's temple, was desecrated due to the setup of a pagan altar to Zeus. In 165 BC, the religion-driven revolt against the Seleucid Empire and the Hellenistic impact on Jewish life had started. The success of the revolt led to the establishment of a Jewish independent rule, the Hasmonean dynasty. A century later, the Roman conquered the region, triggering 2 major revolts. The Great Revolt from the year of 66 to 73 resulted in the destruction of the Second Temple and the downfall of Jerusalem walls, except for the Western Wall only. The second major revolt from 132 to 135 led to the massive Jewish depopulation, as 580,000 Jews were perished in battle, not including those who succumbed to diseases and hunger. After this war, the Jewish communities were devastated, but the remaining population was strong and thriving in Galilee, where they migrated to after being barred from Jerusalem. The Romans gave the name Palestine to Judea, with a view to breaking the Jewish connection with the land of Israel. During this time, Christianity, which started off as a Jewish sect, ultimately became a distinct religion. It was the dominant religion towards the end of the Roman Empire. Between the 4th and the early 7th century, under the Byzantine and Visigoths Empire, the thriving Jewish community in the Mediterranean basin was subjected to the persecution and forced conversion to Christianity. After the birth of Islam, an Arab conquest began, and to some extent, the Jews supported it in the hope of better conditions. They were tolerated by the Arabs. Forced conversion was only applied to polytheistic people. The Dome of the Rock was built on the ruin of the Second Temple, making Jerusalem the holy city to 3 monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Jewish communities were tolerated and gradually established all over Western Europe as the new millennium approached. In 1099, Christians in Europe launched several crusades to bring the holy city back to the hands of the Christians, after Christians in Jerusalem were intensely persecuted by the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian people with a strong desire for the expansion. On their way, they massacred the Jews, who they considered to be killers of Jesus. Between 1346 and 1353, the Jews were scapegoated as the cause of Black Death, the disease that killed half of the European population in just 5 years. They were accused of poisoning wells, persecuted along the Rhine and Rhone region, and eventually expelled. After the Reconquista ends in 1492, the expulsion in Spain began, and the Ottoman Empire became the main new land that the Jews chose to settle in. In nearly 30 years from 1520, the walls of Jerusalem were rebuilt, and the Jewish population in Jerusalem expanded. During the 16th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth adopted favorable migration policies, making it a new haven for the Jews from Western Europe. In the early 17th century, about half of the world's Jewish population settled in the region. However, the Khmelnytsky uprising in Ukraine between 1648 and 1654 changed everything. Being accused of having a privileged relationship with those in power, the Jews were slaughtered. In less than 2 years, the Ukrainians killed between 100,000 to 300,000 Jews and spread their massacres to other countries over the next 10 years. Toward the end of the 18th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth weakened and eventually collapsed. The Russians acquired its territories. The Jewish community was divided, and 900,000 Jews were in the Russian Empire unwelcomed. During the first half of the 19th century, the Jews were cruelly killed in pogroms, violent riots that demonstrated the Russians' anti-Jewish wave. After that, the immigration to the United States and Western Europe began. There, the living condition of the Jews was vastly improved. The first Zionist Congress in late 19th century took place and strived for the creation of a home that's secured by law in Palestine for Jewish people. This idea was fiercely opposed by the Ottoman Empire. After World War I erupted, the Ottoman Empire sided with the German Empire. In the effort of garnering support for the Allies, the British Minister of Foreign Affairs issued the Balfour Declaration, promising the Jews a national home in Palestine, in return for the support from the Zionist movement. Concurrently, Britain supported the Great Arab Revolt against the Ottoman Empire by promising them independence in the liberated territories. After World War I, following the increasing Jewish population in Palestine, Jewish-Arab tension and violence escalated. World War II broke out and claimed almost 6 million lives of the Jews in the Holocaust. After the war, fierce opposition of Jews and Arabs prompted an overwhelmed Britain to withdraw from the region. The UN partition plan proposed to split this British mandate into an Arab state, a Jewish state, and the city of Jerusalem. Right after the adoption of the plan, due to the rejection of the Arab League, a civil war between the Arabs and the Jews broke out. On May 14, 1948, with the Declaration of Independence by David Ben-Gurion, a Jewish state, the State of Israel, was established. In response, the Arabs declared the First Arab-Israeli War. From this year onwards, Israel has also engaged in various military conflicts, including Suez Crisis, Six-Day War, Yom Kippur War, and 2 Lebanon Wars. The Israeli-Palestine conflict, which has its roots from the mid-20th century, is still ongoing today. Also, since the establishment of Israel, its Jewish population has doubled, as waves of Jewish immigration landed on this territory. Despite the constant instability due to long-running conflicts, amid political turmoil, Israel, home of the largest part of the Jewish world population, has been thriving economically.